if children make allegations and say something, normally there's a process which is followed through. You can't just make allegations, you have to be responsible for them. And I think it would be very helpful to have research evidence to show that really it can benefit them to go through this process.
One more point? Yeah.
I'm Gary Wallen, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, so more of a legalistic background in this. Just make 2 points very quickly. I think the first one is that if allegations are indeed false, that still may well be a sign that the child is distressed. And simply because the allegations are false doesn't mean to say that things stop there. I think the second point to make is that for children who, as we all know, often want to please adults, and with an added context being asked about material a second time round, I think it can be just almost naive to somehow think that by the evidence being brought to court and brought before the judge, that somehow magically ensures a much higher standard of finding out the truth, when in fact maybe factors operating within a child and in their situation, there might be quite a different context to that compared to the ADA interview that they had.
Thank you. I mean, one of the groups is, in fact, this afternoon, includes giving evidence as the main theme. I think it would be very helpful for that group to tease out some of these issues in more detail that Alex has introduced, and maybe at the end we can have a fuller picture. Right, thank you very much. Let's go on to something which I'm sure needs no introduction to many of you. District Judge Nicholas Brighton from the Inner London Family Proceedings Court in Wells Street. He's a member of the Family Justice Council and chair of the Voice of the Child Subcommittee, and he's done a lot of child protection overseas, particularly in Bulgaria and Ethiopia, I think. He's somebody who is very, very experienced in the field, and a lot of you are familiar with, and including myself, I'm very grateful for him coming to talk about his particular programme that he's pioneered in his court for drug and alcohol use. Thank you very much.
5'9", just on tiptoes. Parent of 2, grandparent of 2, by the end of August, all being well, grandparent of 4, so I trumped Mr. Justice. I could talk for an hour just picking up points that we've heard about this morning, but I won't. I'm going to stick to my brief. But before I do, I just have to say that I think the issue of charging local authority fees of whatever amount to protect a child is absolutely shameful. Whether or not it affects local authority decisions, it's going to be in their head. But the message that it sent out, I've just come back from a conference in Cape Town, and lawyers there from America, from Australia, New Zealand and South Africa were just gobsmacked that in the UK, of all places, that we do this. I'm very glad, I'm just a jobbing judge at first instance, I'm very glad that therefore I don't have to deal with the kind of cases that we've heard Alex and Paul Coleridge talk about, because that's really difficult. Family drug and alcohol is what I'm going to talk about. Family drug and alcohol court, we call it FDAC, F-D-A-C. Research tells us that there are up to 350,000 children in England and Wales living in families where there is a significant misuse of drugs or alcohol problem. And whenever we talk about drugs, we mean alcohol as well, because there are 3 or 4 times as many children living in families in England and Wales where there is a significant alcohol problem. And I think we all of us know what are the consequences for the children of those sorts of problems. Research suggests that 60 to 70% of all care proceedings before the courts have this element. If you were to ask me off the top of my head in my courtroom, I would say it was 80 to 90% where we've got that problem. But it's not just that problem, it's a whole basket full of other problems. It's mental health, it's learning disability, it's housing, it's relationship, it's debt, it's domestic violence. I can go on and on and on. We all know the basket full of problems that these parents bring. And traditionally, we have been inclined to say to parents, haven't we, go away and deal with your problem with alcohol or drugs, and then come back and talk to us. And they can't, because they're dragged down by all the other problems, and often the drugs and alcohol is just a symptom of all the other problems. And those few who have the strength to go and find a drug or alcohol facility, find there's a waiting list. So we'll put you on the list and come back in 3 months. And we've lost them by then. They've screwed themselves up to do something about it, and then they drop back into the mire. I think everybody knows this situation. We are removing routinely the 6th, the 7th, the 8th child from this family for this reason. And nothing has changed since the first child. Nothing. And I have had women scream at me in court, take this one away, I'll go on having another one every year until you let me keep one. In one case, I removed the 14th. A colleague in Birmingham once removed the 15th, and nothing has changed. And the cost to those families, the cost to those children, and the cost, if we want to talk about it in terms of economics, to the nation, only as Susan Kramer said, we're not allowed to think about the costs in years to come. But we all know the massive costs if we want to talk about the economic costs. And the family drug, quite apart from the costs of children being born into suffering from drugs withdrawal symptoms, and the accounts that we hear from people who work in the hospitals dealing with these little mites who are born 6 and 8 weeks early and spend 6 or 8 weeks in the worst cases in incubators fighting for life. It's just not acceptable. Now, I was privileged enough some 6 years ago now to be in Australia at a conference on children's rights, and heard a judge from California talk about some of the initiatives that they're taking in America. And America are good at trying things and finding out if they work. We are a bit suspicious, and we take time to sort of develop other ideas. So it's taken quite a long time to achieve it. But we have now got FDAC at my court in Wells Street. And what we have got is a team, and I'm delighted that Sophie Kershaw, stand up Sophie so that everybody can see you. But she leads the team. There. I embarrass her by doing that because you may want to talk to her at lunchtime, and she's worth talking to. She leads the FDAC team. It's a team of, it's 3 or maybe now 4 social workers. We have 3 substance misuse experts. We have access to an adult psychiatrist, access to a child and adolescent psychiatrist. We have a housing link worker, and I'll come back to that issue if I have time in a minute. We put people in touch immediately with drug services, with alcohol services. Anything else that is needed as we identify what the problems are in this family, we have to buy in. And we work intensively with them to try to crack the problem and to try to turn them round and enable them to be good enough parents, because of the belief that if we can enable them to keep this child, the risk of their having 10 more in the next 10 years is very significantly reduced. They may have another 2, they may have another 3, but they're not going to be having 1 a year for the next 10 years. And in terms of court process, they come to the first hearing and we tell them about FDAC, about the process. We then send them away for 3 weeks, and they link in with Sophie and her team, and they learn more about it. And the team carry out an assessment of them in 3 weeks, not 20 weeks. And it's a very full assessment. And we come up with an intervention plan for that family that tackles all their problems, hopefully, going forward. And they come back after 3 weeks, and we say,